Hello, everybody, and welcome into Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I am Nick Bate. He's Ricardo Martinez-Baz. Ricardo, 18 weeks flew by, man, and now we got the playoffs. I can't believe how fast this season always goes, and the fact that we're into the middle of winter now and playoffs, and the Eagles in the wild card round after losing out on the division, the Steelers sneaking into the playoffs as the 7th seed. So, we got both these teams in the playoffs. We didn't have that last year, so that's a nice little change of pace. Obviously, you're probably not feeling as good about your team as last year's playoffs, but we'll get into all of that today and more. But first, Ricardo, how you doing, my man?
Pretty good overall. You know, it's kind of hard not to think about the Eagles given their state and you know how they've been the last 6 weeks. But you know, other than that, we've been good. How about you, man?
I'm holding up all right. I've been up in Canada skiing the last week, so I'm a little bit tired, a little bit drained, but yeah, still doing good. And man, I'm excited to talk about the Steelers in the playoffs, man.
Same, man.
You know, this was a team when they just barely missed out on the playoffs last year. I was like, this is a team that if they take a step in the right direction is a playoff team this season. Didn't unfold the way I thought it would with the struggles of the offensive line early in the season, the struggles of the running game, Kenny Pickett, obviously, you know, going down, and never would have expected Mason Rudolph to have the renaissance of his career that he has right now. But overall, man, I'm happy that they're in the playoffs. And I think we got to just jump right into it. Let's start with the Steelers because they're playing hot. And they win their 3rd game in a row, man, to get themselves. Well, they needed, you know, a couple different things to happen, some help from other teams, but they held up there under the stick, winning their 3rd game of the row, beating the Baltimore Ravens 17-10 in Baltimore. Really brutal conditions too. It was rainy, windy. I think the temperature was sitting right around like 34 degrees. So it wasn't cold enough to be snow. So you really just had that brutal cold on top of rain. Awful conditions to play in. But they fight through it. And, you know, with the steady play of Mason Rudolph at quarterback, man, he didn't make any super detrimental turnovers, didn't really, you know, try to do too much. Ultimately still threw for a touchdown, finding Deontay Johnson that put the Steelers ahead for good. And, you know, really for the offense, the way that they kind of dominated this game was Najee Harris and this offensive line, man. They are peaking at the right time. And on the ground, Harris had 26 carries for 112 yards and a touchdown. That's Steeler football right there, man. That's the way that the Steelers want to play and want to win games. And it was really the ground game that led the offense in this one.
Yeah, dude. I feel like we've been saying that the last few weeks, the run game kind of powering the offense. And I mean, it's always this time of year. I swear last year, the same thing. It was like the last few weeks, they relied on the run game a lot. And it's the same thing this year. I mean, it's the run game that's ultimately powering them. And, you know, obviously the difference is Kenny Pickett's not playing, but still Mason Rudolph is doing his part in keeping the ball out of harm's way. So that goes a long way too. Managing the game well and making the throws when he has to. Like that Deontay Johnson strike was just, I mean, that was perfectly placed. I mean, in such bad conditions too. It was, you know, even more impressive. But yeah, that run game is just heating up right at the perfect time. And I know we're going to talk about the Bills and, you know, some of the conditions, the weather that's coming up, and it's just this is the right time for them to be heating up on the run game. And I know Jaylen Warren didn't have the best game, but you know, at least you have that 1-2 punch still. It's like if one of them doesn't exactly perform that well, the other one typically does. And then if it's both, that even better. Then you're like, it's even harder to stop them. So, credit to the offensive line, the run game, and really just pounding the rock and relying on what they know best, what they do best.
Yes, man. And I mean, you said it. They've really been heating up, not just this week, but the last 3 weeks. Najee Harris has had 78, 122, and 112 rushing yards and 4 total touchdowns over the last 3 games in that span. So it's still that 1-2 punch, man. I give a lot of credit to the offensive line. And specifically, I think a lot of it is, honestly, former Eagle Isaac Seumalo is playing great football right now in the run game. And it's really starting to mesh in those inside offensive linemen, along with James Daniels and Mason Cole. And obviously, we've talked about the difference Broderick Jones has made for this team throughout the season. Yeah. So it's all kind of coming together at the perfect time for the Steelers in this run game, man. And I just can't say enough how crazy of a story this, turnaround Mason Rudolph has had in his career, man. I was reading an article from The Athletic today. The fact that, like, this guy straight up was, like, thinking his career was over, was trying to, talk to his dad about getting into the real estate, industry, and started making a resume for jobs in that field and everything, man. And then to just see, the opportunity. This was a guy that back in the day when the Steelers drafted him in the 3rd round, people were saying this guy's going to be the successor to Ben Roethlisberger, and that was kind of the expectation. And, his career didn't get off to the best start when he had an opportunity when Ben Roethlisberger got hurt. But, man, he's making the most of his opportunity now, and he's definitely going to have a job come next season. Honestly, I don't know, what his future holds with the Steelers. I think it still kind of has yet to be played out. But at the very least, I think he's going to be a primary backup for a team, possibly Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, that good for him for, taking advantage of the opportunity he's been given. Obviously, the injury to Pickett, you never want that to your starting quarterback, but always that next man up mentality. And yeah, and Rudolph has done exactly that. He's been that next man up and delivering. How many games have they won in a row? 3 now, I
Three
believe.
now.
Yeah. So outdueling Geno Smith, which I guess this season isn't that. Like if this was last season, yeah, we'd have a bigger conversation. But still, it was in Seattle in a very raucous environment. Same thing with the Ravens. I mean, very, very raucous. Environment there too. So, and that's a rival. So, I mean, these
And
teams,
not to mention also beating the Bengals when the Bengals still had a shot at the playoffs themselves.
that's also true. Yeah, and they absolutely destroyed them then.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, while we're kind of, talking a little bit about the success over these last 3 games, let me add to that in those last 3 games, this is a different Pittsburgh Steelers offense outside of just the running game. But Mason Rudolph is bringing a certain element to it with his ability to throw the ball downfield and kind of deliver strikes, like you said earlier, the touchdown throw to Deontay Johnson in those brutal conditions. But the last 3 games, they're 4th in points per game, 5th in yards per game, and 100. And they're averaging 156.7 yards per game rushing the football. That's 3rd in the NFL over that span. So this offense is playing as good as we've seen since, Ben Roethlisberger was on the team, being frank. And, you kind of start to wonder, like, man, had they not turned to Mitch Trubisky and they just, rolled with Rudolph, it's tough you can never, kind of look back on that and try to form like real valid opinions. But man, even if you win 2 of those 3 games that they lost to the Cardinals, the Colts, and the Patriots, man, we're talking about a team that, people would be saying, man, they're coming in real hot right now. And also, they'd be in contention, frankly, at that record for, possibly as high as the 5th wild card spot. So they get in as the 7th man. They take care of business in Baltimore. And, we'll talk about the Bills matchup later, man. But, a 7 seed has never won. Since they expanded the playoff, a 7 seed has never beat the 1 seed, but they're playing really hot right now.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't going to be. I mean, they're going to be a tough out. And I know we're going to get into that, but I think this game might be closer than people think, especially with some other conditions. But again, we'll get into that.
I agree. Yeah, there's a lot more that we have to get into as far as the rest of breaking down this game against the Ravens. I guess the only thing I kind of have to say on the defense a little bit is they held Baltimore out of the end zone pretty much the rest of the game. Well, yeah, after Deontay Johnson scored, they didn't allow Baltimore a touchdown in the 4th quarter, which was pretty huge. Did okay against the run game. I mean, that was kind of what you expected. Again, they were going up against a lot of Baltimore backups, which, Baltimore decided to go the route of kind of resting their players. But, they held strong. And, I'll talk a little bit in stock up, stock down about some individual performances that were really impressive. But overall, the defense held everybody out of the end zone. The one big piece from the defense that hurts is obviously the TJ Watt injury. It seems like he avoided anything serious. JJ Watt said that it's just going to be rest and recovery for a few weeks. He's already been ruled out for this game. But, man, I just feel bad because the leader of this defense, the guy that should be the defensive player of the year this season, and I'm strong on that. He should be the defensive player of the year. Not going to get a shot in the playoffs to, be that disruptor and make his imprint on Steelers history. That was one of the things I really was pushing for the Steelers to get into the playoffs, was to give TJ Watt an opportunity, along with Cam Hayward, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and some of the other stars on this defense. But, thankfully it's nothing major, but it's unfortunate that he's going to at least miss this game.
Yeah. That's such a brutal loss, man. I mean, it certainly could have been worse. But it's still not ideal. It's still, it sucks. It really does. And the talk we had this talk, just of like, him hopefully getting his first playoff win with the Steelers. And I mean, in theory, if they were to win, they would, but it just wouldn't be on the field. Still, it's just
Yeah.
yes, he's definitely defensive player of the year, and I also agree with that. Like I'm very strong on that too. Led the league in sacks. I
Which
mean, he
is
had
annoying because it sounds like everything. I mean, I think the All Pros even came out today, and I'm pretty sure Myles Garrett was first team All Pro at that position.
yeah, and he also didn't play well down the stretch, which makes no sense either. So I don't know what the logic was there, but whatever. They
Yeah,
they
didn't play
snubbed him
well down the
there.
stretch. And TJ Watt had 2 sacks in the game he didn't even finish in week
Exactly.
18. This game the Steelers had to win.
Yeah, and I just yeah, that's a whole different conversation. That I mean, that just shows you how much he impacts the game, the defense, how much of a game wrecker he is. Like the dude is just a monster. And it's what was that stat? He's led the league in sacks 3 different seasons, I think it
3
was.
different
And
seasons, yeah.
yeah, and how many players have done that? JJ Watt has.
I
And
think JJ Watt, and there was maybe one more.
yeah, I was gonna say it was only like one or two others after that. So that's like elite company there. Like I don't know how he
It
does it
might have been
with
it might have been Reggie White, but I don't remember for sure. I know he's definitely on a list with JJ Watt and Reggie White, but I don't remember
yeah,
100%.
right. But yeah, still he's such a big player. I mean, it's just special. I feel like he just and I don't want to say goes under the radar, but like maybe doesn't get the praise that he deserves. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's certainly the Steelers are going to miss him this coming week. Still,
Yeah.
still.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. And I don't know what the reason is that he kind of flies under the radar like that. I mean, that's a good way to put it. Maybe it's because his brother was one of the greatest defensive players of all time before him. Maybe it's because guys like Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons were, they get more talk because they were higher draft picks. But I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, man. He's such a premier pass rusher. And yeah, it's going to be, Mike Tomlin said it's going to be a team effort to try to, fill in, the loss of not having him coming off the edge this week. With guys like Nick Herbig and Marcus Golden that are going to see more snaps, obviously. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit more later in the game. There's some other stuff I want to talk about this game, but I'm going to try to save it for stock up, stock down. So we'll save that, and I guess we can transition over to the Eagles, which was, brutal. I mean, in multiple phases, whether it's the product out on the field, whether it's the multitude of injuries that transpired in the game, whether it's the fact that, Tyrod Taylor lit up their defense in this one. There's a laundry list of things where when the Eagles were beat by the Cardinals, it was like, all right, how do they really bounce back? And A.J. Brown's talking all week about everything's still right in front of us. And to just lay an egg like that against your rival Giants in the last week of the season and fully limp into the playoffs, man. This is some really bad football that the Eagles are playing. It feels like their season is kind of coming to a crashing halt. And I kind of said in the description for this episode, they're kind of running on fumes. But I'm curious, where you kind of want to go with all that.
I really don't know where to go because I feel like a lot of what I could say is stuff I've been saying the last few weeks. And just, I mean, you also talked about it. They're not playing their best football. I mean, this is their worst football, which is not the time you want to be playing. Like, okay, it makes sense at the beginning of the season if you're playing your worst football, fine. That's early on. But I mean, there's just so many different issues with this team. I mean, this game specifically, 2 big injuries. I mean, AJ Brown and that knee injury. He was holding his knee. I thought for sure it was a torn ACL. Thankfully, wasn't. But he hasn't practiced yesterday or today, so that's slightly concerning going into Monday. And then actually there's another one on the defensive side. Sidney Brown, a torn ACL. And I know he's had his ups and downs, but still he's had a promising rookie season, and it's a shame that he's not going to be able to play, and he's going to be out for, I mean, 8 months, probably
Yeah.
longer than that, and might miss the start of the season
I
next
was
year.
I was
So
gonna say, I mean, expecting him even back for the start of the season is kind of rough at this point.
yeah, that's wishful thinking. Yeah, so I mean that was another huge loss. And then Jalen Hurts and his finger, on a throw. I think might have been on the interception. Or it was an incompletion that like his middle finger specifically, kind of his middle finger got jammed by Bobby Okereke's hand. So that's just one of those freak injuries, and his finger kind of popped out of place, which I mean, obviously was never a good thing with his throwing hand. And then he came out of the game and they taped it up, and then he went back in, and then even said in a press conference like 2 days ago, he's like, he was like going back into the game probably wasn't the smartest idea. It didn't help his
Yeah,
fingers. But thankfully today he practiced fully. Yesterday he didn't throw.
yeah.
Um, so I mean he wasn't gonna miss the game. It was
I mean,
just
yeah,
like
there's no doubt he's gonna play this week. So
it was just, it just felt like one thing after the other. And like you said, Tyrod Taylor kind of lit up the Eagles defense. I mean, just the same, more of the same from Matt Patricia, and just soft coverages, questionable play calling, and just easy completions to all the receivers. It's just like there's no challenging at the line of scrimmage, and they're not getting pressure from the front four. It's just across the board horrible defensively.
yeah,
Um, and I mean, I guess I'm just going to talk about the team generally because it's just, again, more of the same. Offensively, couldn't handle the blitz to save their lives. Wink Martindale, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you just dialed up blitz after blitz, and it was.
Wink Martindale, who also just got let go of being the
I was going to say
the
that was
coordinator.
that
Yeah,
was really interesting, but they did a good job of keeping that under the wraps, sort of deal. But in any case, the Eagles just have no answers for the blitz. Jalen Hurts has thrown 8 interceptions against the blitz. That's bad. I mean, last season he was, I believe, top 5 against the blitz. So I mean, and then just still there's no hot routes, there's no quick dump downs to get rid of the ball quickly. There's just none of that. There's no safety valve. There's no creativity. Again, more of the same of what I've been saying. It's just altogether absolutely like just terrible. And again, I'm gonna say it comes down to the head coach ultimately. And every single press conference, it's just like more of the same talk, more of the we have to, play better. We're not playing our best football, but it's just run out at this point. It's like all those words, especially and Jalen Hurts too. Sometimes with we got to learn from this. We're learning from our mistakes. It's just like you keep saying these things, but there's no, response on the field. There's no product. You're not showing it. You're just telling us. So they're very hollow words. Like there's just no like meat to it. There's no belief in it. I don't even know if the players themselves believe that. And that's the most concerning thing is that I mean, they can say all these things and they're media trained and all this, but do they really believe it? I'm not sure. And we're probably going to see that on Monday on full display because, I mean, seriously, this has just been absolutely atrocious the last few weeks. And you could argue the last 6 weeks, honestly, but it's just very, very bad across the board.
do you think there's any scenario where Nick Sirianni's job is hypothetically on the line, whether it's losing to the Bucks in the first round, or even if they narrowly scrape by the Buccaneers and lose pretty easily in the divisional round? I mean, do you think there's any shot that he goes, or is this something more where there's going to be a scapegoat with some of the other coaches on the staff?
See, this is where I've had this back and forth with myself, just thinking about it and all the stuff I've been reading. I I'm just me personally. If the Eagles get blown out by the Bucks, I don't know how you bring Sirianni back because you just think about how they were 10-1. They were, I mean, they had the best record in the league. Um, sure, you could chalk up the loss to the Niners to they were on short rest, or the Niners had more rest, and they had come off that emotional win against the Bills in
Yeah.
overtime. Cowboys, fine. You played in Dallas, fine. All right, that's I'll give you another one there. But after that, it was like it just fell off even more. I just don't know. Like I don't know how because it feels like he's lost the locker room. And it just seems like there's a lot of frustration. It just seems toxic inside a lot, and I just don't know how you ever gain the trust back of players because most of those players are going to be back.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know how you can overcome something like that. I've never seen an Eagles team collapse like this. I don't know how often that's happened just generally, and I don't have the numbers or like the stats on head coaches getting fired after collapses like this, but um it just feels like a lack of trust. It just I don't know. There's no belief in this team anymore, and that's something where it felt like Sirianni was good at getting this team fired up, and it's just missing, man. I don't know if there's just a burnout, but I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't
Well, that's where
know.
you wonder too, is it something where it's like if the message just isn't getting through and it's like Sirianni's supposed to be, seem more as like a player's coach, kind of in that same breath as Mike Tomlin, but it's like maybe there's just like not enough separation there between, coach and player and kind of that relationship. And if the message isn't getting through, man, that's kind of something it's reminding me of when Doug Peterson's time in Philadelphia kind of came to an end because it was like it wasn't really the expectation, but as things wore on and the season progressed, and it was like it was that last game of the season too, where I think they pulled I don't remember who the quarterback was at the time, but they made that decision at the quarterback, and it was like, man, it just feels like you're doing things to lose the locker room more and more, and it's a different set of circumstances this year because the Eagles are still going to make the playoffs, but it's like, man, like are you losing the locker room? Like, can you regain it? Like, what's the issue here? And I guess the one thing he does have is it's like he hasn't, he's not calling, the defense or the offense. He's kind of just in that in-between realm where it's easy to have a scapegoat if things don't go well. And, I could see that potentially. I think either way, Philadelphia kind of realizes they need new coordinators next year, especially definitely on the defensive side. Offense, I think the conversation is definitely going to be there. But with him as well, you wonder, is it like, it's tough. It's 1 year removed from the Super Bowl. Are you going to overhaul the whole coaching staff? But I feel like that's kind of what the conversation is going to be if they get blown out by the Buccaneers.
If they don't get blown out by the Bucs, then and let's say they lose narrowly, or if they win for that matter, and which would surprise me beyond anything, but. I think Sirianni, actually, even if they do get blown, I feel like Sirianni will get another season, but he's going to be on a very short. He might just get fired mid-season next year, but that's a whole different conversation. But I don't know. I just think defensively, everyone has to just get rid of every single one of them, every single coordinator. They've not done this any favors, and. I mean, Brian Johnson's a whole different discussion. He hasn't been, he's a young, this is like his first time in the NFL. So you knew there were going to be growing pains, but, there's going to be pressure on him. I'm just going to assume that they're going to retain him because he is young and he's still relatively new at the position. So I think, I just think, I don't know, the Sirianni and Brian Johnson will be back. Defensively, I think they're all gone. That's just plain and simple.
It's fair. It's fair. I mean, there's going to be changes on the coaching staff, and I know you're a big fan of Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach. So, like, there's going to be coaches they retain, but there's definitely going to be overhaul without a doubt. I think no matter various circumstances. But is there anything else you want to touch on from the Giants game here? I know we kind of went a little bit off talking about the coaching stuff and everything like that, but it's an important aspect of it. But anything else you want to touch on from this game? I mean, it was kind of washed because, the Cowboys led pretty much their whole game against Washington. And with all the injuries that started to pile up, and then you saw some Marcus Mariota action in there as well. But anything else that you kind of took away from this game?
Man, there really wasn't much to take away from this game, but again, more of the same. So, I can't really. I don't think there's anything to add, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough in Week 18 when it's so bad like this, and you just wonder, like, is there any way that they can kind of jumpstart this? But we'll talk more about the defense, and I guess we'll talk more about all this when we preview their matchup against the Buccaneers. So let's get into stock up, stock down, and we'll flip back over to the Steelers. Stock up this week, man. I talked about Najee Harris a lot. But he's really proving his worth and ability to the Steelers running attack right now with his, really great stretch of play. So he gets a ton of credit, and kind of in that same breath, the offensive line and Isaac Seumalo specifically, I want to give a lot of credit to, because I think just the way that it's all kind of come together, this is the bread and butter way that the Steelers want to play, football, run it. I'll get the play action going off of the running game, and just with how good the offensive line has been creating push at the line of scrimmage, and Najee Harris has been playing, they've been the key to the offensive success recently, along with Mason Rudolph also playing incredibly well.
Yeah, definitely deserve credit. That's so much credit. I mean, from considering where they were earlier in the season to now, I mean, it just feels like they've gelled together. They're playing well together as a unit, so they absolutely deserve credit. I also had them as a stock up.
No doubt. Now on the defense, I also want to give credit to Eric Rowe, man. I mean, the fact that this guy was unsigned, not on a team, and now he's come in and played really incredible football for this team. He led them in tackles again this week with 12. He also had a forced fumble, man. I mean, it's just crazy. I think Cam Hayward even said it. Like, how this guy wasn't on a team already is beyond anyone's, it doesn't make sense. I mean, now all of a sudden the Steelers getting Minkah Fitzpatrick back, and DeMonte Casey coming back from the suspension, and the fact that you've also gotten decent play from Patrick Peterson at the safety position. Eric Rowe has stepped up so big time. I mean, now they have some options at safety, and they can really try to get creative in the secondary for this playoff game in Buffalo. So Eric Rowe gets a ton of credit on the defensive side of the ball.
Oh, dude, he was number one for me out of everyone you gave stock up to. Because I mean, literally, how does this even happen? Like, it's crazy. It's unreal how he's like been unsigned for this long, and then to come out and play like he hasn't missed a snap all season. It's just like he's been one of their best players the last 2 weeks ever since he signed, really. So I mean, that's just crazy, the impact he's made already. And to have him as an option now with those players coming back, like you said, like that, I mean, that's even better for the defense. Like,
it allows flexibility and creativity in the secondary, which is something I think is going to be key for the Steelers. It's, again, the weather's going to be a factor for Buffalo. We'll talk about that a little bit, but yeah, definitely great to have options in the secondary, especially when you talk about the lack of depth at linebacker. To see what else you can do to get, even more possible better matchups. I did 4 stock ups. My last one, I just want to give some more credit to Mike Tomlin, man. I mean, it's one of those things where I was really low on him during that 3-game losing streak, and it's really frustrating. Kind of the up and down roller coaster this season has been with him at the helm. And, obviously at times questioning, is he losing the locker room? This team doesn't seem to have an identity, all of these different things. But, for them to look so dead in the water, like they were going to miss the playoffs, be under 500, and then to still come and rally the team and win these last 3 games to get in the playoffs and finish 10-7, man. I mean, it's impressive. And, it's like he always says, never too high, never too low. And that's kind of been the story of the Steelers this year. And especially in the second half with the ups and downs.
Dude, hell of a coach, man. I don't know how he keeps doing it, but seriously, it's just impressive every single year, regardless of who's on the team. I mean, regardless who's that coordinator, like, it just seems like he always has the locker room, and he just coaches them so well. He's just, like you said, players coach, ultimate players coach. It's just, man, I don't know how. I genuinely don't know how he keeps doing it. Like, just it's crazy. It's like good for him, man. Like, it just, and for the Steelers, just generally too. Now, I don't know if I should ask you this question now.
Go ahead.
I'm sure if you've seen it already, but the talk that Mike Tomlin might leave at the end of the season, or at whenever their postseason end runs. I don't know if you have any thoughts or opinions on that, because that's a really
I'll be honest, I haven't read too much on that recently. I will say, like, I saw something on ESPN where, like, it was like, ranking all these different head coaches going to the last week of the season, like how stable their job was, and they included Mike Tomlin on it. And I'm a Tomlin guy. I think he's now the longest tenured head coach in the NFL, with Belichick and the Patriots parting ways. I would love to see him stay in Pittsburgh. I don't know what his opinions are on it. I mean, I think all of his kids are kind of older now, so it's not like he's got to worry about moving them to different schools. I know his one son is playing football at Columbia right now. So, the move may not be the biggest thing, man, but I hope that they stay together, and I hope that he stays in Pittsburgh. But I honestly haven't read up too much on the possibility of him, even being, kind of going in a different direction after the season ends. But I certainly want him to stay in Pittsburgh. I think he's one of the best head coaches in the NFL, and I think people that think differently are crazy. And I mean, when you just talk about the success he's had in his time in Pittsburgh, I mean, look no further to, all the success getting to the playoffs, all the success of being above 500. I mean, he always seems to just get the best out of his teams at the end of the season. He's always got them in a position to potentially make the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just, I don't want him to leave either. And just, one of the best coaches in the league. Like, I mean, if he's, like kind of if he wants a break, okay, that's like understandable because he's been doing this for so long. But ultimately, I do hope he stays for another season. And I mean, we'll definitely revisit this at some point if it comes up 100%. Again. But
I mean, it's also the thing. It's like, it's one thing if he's still interested in coaching just somewhere else. It's another thing if he kind of, like you said, wants a break. I mean, we saw that with Bill Cowher. He kind of left, took a break, and ended up never coming back to coaching. Not with the Steelers, not with any other organization. So, I mean, is it possible? I mean, we just saw that with Sean Payton take a 1-year break, and he's back in coaching in a different location. So we'll see. But I hope he stays in Pittsburgh, man, because the stability that he's brought to the organization, and the fact that the Steelers have only had, 3 head coaches dating back to the start of, Chuck Noll being in Pittsburgh. I'm sure the Rooney family wants to keep him here too, because that's the Rooney way, man. They love that stability. And while I think there needs to be some innovation at the offensive coordinator position, I certainly want Mike Tomlin to be there as the head coach. So we'll see. We'll revisit that if anything new kind of comes up that we got to discuss. The only stock down I gave this week, to get back to that, was George Pickens. 0 targets, 0 receptions in the game.
Right.
This is just the frustration of it, where it seems like he's finally finding the best parts of his game with 2 huge performances the last 2 weeks. Now, again, it's tough conditions, but to go completely silent, man, it's like it doesn't make sense how that even happened. So while he's been really good the 2 weeks prior, I mean, it's frustrating to see him just not be in the stat sheet. I mean, I think he had 1 rush for 3 yards was the only thing that he really logged in this game.
Yeah, I mean, that was really weird to see him not get any targets at all. I don't really know if I wasn't watching him like specifically when the Steelers were playing, but I don't know if he got locked up, but like still, it's like you kind of expect him to keep this going. I mean, I'm sure he will bounce back against a not as good secondary as Buffalo, but I mean, the Ravens have a ridiculous defense anyway, but maybe it's just a one-off. Who knows? I mean, it would have been nice to see him sort of keep up the production he had the 2 weeks prior, but I think he'll be fine ultimately.
Yeah. All right, so that's everything I have for stock up, stock down. Where are you at with the Eagles, man? It's stock up, stock down.
All right. Stock up, I give to Quez Watkins. He's my only one. It's weird I'm giving them to just different receivers generally the last few weeks because for whatever reason, no one else has stepped up. But
I mean, you can't give it to anybody on the defense. So
no, absolutely not. I can't even remember the last time I gave it to anyone on defense. But that's but Quez Watkins had 8 catches, 93 yards, and the only touchdown of the game. So and at that point, again, it didn't really matter because he was just filling in for AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. So I mean, the only one I'm going to give to, and
no, I mean, it's deserving. I put him on the thumbnail of this episode. I mean, he had a good game, but it's like, all right, that's great. There's so much other bad stuff. It's like good for Quez Watkins. Outside of that, there's a lot of issues.
Stock down, I have to give it to the entire defense. I don't need to repeat myself, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Health wise, I mean, this certainly didn't help in this game. I mean, people argue like, oh, why did Sirianni even have the starters play in the first place? I mean, you still had a shot realistically.
You had to put him out there.
Yeah, so it's like I'm not gonna blame him for that. Like that, you obviously had to do that. So I mean,
it's brutal, and it's just bad luck that the injury bug just so happened to be the last week of the season.
I was literally about to say that.
But it's like there's a lot of outside of the injuries, there's so much wrong with Philadelphia that it's like, if this Philadelphia team like came into the playoffs, like let's say on like a 3-game winning streak here, they closed out beating all these, bad teams, and then these injuries happen, like it'd be a bigger conversation. But the fact that like they have lost these last 2 weeks so poorly, like the injuries are almost overshadowed because it's like whether they're healthy or not, it's almost irrelevant to the idea of them making a playoff run.
Yeah. Oh, whoa, my phone is going off. Hold on. But sorry, going back. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
my
That's what I'm
last
saying
thought,
is it's easy to have the injuries, not be as relevant when it's like, okay, it's like this even if everyone's healthy 100%, it's like this team still has so many massive issues.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's just. I mean, my last dog down. I have to say, I haven't given this to at all this season, but I'll say Eagles fans, just because. I mean, we've endured so much, just poor play the last few weeks, and then just our Eagles fans are definitely ruthless themselves. They're so quick to turn. So, I mean, myself included, in the sense of like it's been a slow burn, but yeah, I mean, it's just nothing really seems to be going right across any media, across any facet. So I'm gonna just throw Eagles fans in there because it's just been, they're not doing. I mean, they really shouldn't be helping the team either, because why should they after all the horrible performances the last few weeks? But everyone deserves to be there except for Quez Watkins and Stock Down. But yeah, that's all I got. So
it's no, it's rough for sure, and it's like now with the playoffs coming, it's
I've heard no optimism.
It's like I said, it's like what?
I've heard no optimism from like any Eagles fans that I know. So that just tells you where Eagles fans stand right now.
Eagles fans, Eagles media, it's the expectations are low, and it's definitely been quite the fall to the end of the season. But let's get into previewing these matchups a little bit. We'll start with the Steelers at Bills. This game is on Saturday at 1:00. First game. So we'll talk about it first. Kind of unfortunate that it's at 1:00. I mean, I have a ski race tomorrow, so I probably won't be able to watch the first half of this game at least, and then hopefully I can get the end of it on my phone. I got a lot of Bills fans that are on the ski team, so this is going to be interesting to kind of watch and talk about it. One of my buddies that I live with and is on the ski team is also a Bills fan, so we'll be going back and forth with that one. I'm sure we'll all be huddled around a phone in the lodge after the race watching the game. But as far as the game itself, man, the first thing you kind of have to talk about with this matchup, Buffalo is expecting a foot of snow and 60-plus mile-per-hour winds. So that's going to be some crazy factors that both of these teams are going to have to fight through. And it's one thing where it's like, I know where I'm located. I'm in New York State right now. Where I'm located, it's expected to be rain. Where they're located, snow. So it's going to be really variable conditions. And I read something right before we hopped on air that like the weather report is saying whiteout conditions. So it's going to be brutal. I'm kind of hyped up for it. I love snow football. I think the weather conditions benefit the Steelers to try to, possibly be another thing that can help slow down Josh Allen in the passing attack. Especially a Steelers defense that can force turnovers. Maybe they can do some of that in this game, man. But it's definitely going to be a slugfest running the football. What team can battle the elements more, man? It's going to be a huge factor in tomorrow's game.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was saying before. I was like, the run game is heating up at the right time, and this is definitely the game with the snow. I mean, that you have to rely on the run, because let's be real. How often do you think either quarterback is gonna pass or throw the ball? Like, and those conditions,
as bad as everything I've read, like we may see like less than 10 passing attempts, and this game could come down to just like, can one team or the other get in the end zone, one extra time? I don't even know if the kickers are going to be able to kick field goals.
Probably not
tomorrow. So we'll have to see with that. But it's expected to be brutal, and some of the peak of it's going to be like right around game time too. So it's going to be no joke. And you've said it. I mean, that's great for the Steelers that their running game is peaking at the perfect time. And it's going to just be that, man. It's going to be like, both of these teams are going to be stacking the box on defense, but it's just going to be, can the offensive line continue to dominate the way they have? Can Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren Can one of them go off for a big day? I mean, it kind of reminds me of back a couple of years ago when the Steelers had a game up in Buffalo and Le'Veon Bell had a big snow game. I think he rushed for close to 200 yards and like 3 touchdowns. So, that's kind of the performance the Steelers are going to need because, yeah, I don't see a lot of passing in this game.
Yeah. I mean, it's just going to be attacking from the ground, really. Like, there's no other way to go about it. I just think of I think back to that Lions Eagles game back in oh man, what was it, 2012? I think it was years ago, but it was kind of similar. It was just a bunch of snow. Like, there were hardly any throws, and LaShawn
Yeah.
McCoy popped off. He went off in that game for 2 touchdowns and over 150 rushing yards, something like that. That's kind of what I expect going into this game. I mean, if you can't run the ball, then you're kind of screwed because you're not going to throw the ball through the air. But again, yeah, just I mean, I would, if I had to pick between both offenses running the ball, I think right now I would pick the Steelers. So,
I mean, that's where I'm at too, man. And I mean, we'll talk about the spread in a little bit. It opened to 10. It's down to 9.5 now, according to FanDuel. But I don't know what Vegas thinks, this big spread is going to be for because the passing attack is going to be on hold. I mean, look, the Steelers still have to find a way to hold the Bills running game in check. Josh Allen is a weapon out of the backfield. There's no doubt about that. We're going to see a lot of read options. James Cook has looked really good at points this year. A month ago, 4 weeks ago, he had 179 rushing yards. But since then, he's had 70, 48, and then 36 this last week. So it's kind of like, what are you really going to, what version of James Cook in this Bills running attack are we really going to see?
Right.
When he had that big game, that's when I was like, oh, damn, this Bills team might be really legit. And they may have a formula of, pound the rock and kind of throw off of that. But they haven't really pursued that as much since. So it makes me want, that's the type of thing where it's like they got to find a way to not let James Cook have a big day, man. And like you said, it's going to come down to which team runs the ball better, which team controls the possession better, and frankly, which team just doesn't turn it over either and can find a way to get in the end zone. Both the Steelers and Bills are kind of middle of the pack in rushing offense this year, or defense against the rush. I was looking earlier. Both of them are kind of middle of the pack. This is what I hate about the ESPN stats. They don't number the teams, so you have to count it out. But both of them middle of the pack, and the Steelers have gotten progressively better as the season has gone on. They were near the bottom early in the season. Now they've kind of come up where they're not even one of the bottom 10 teams against the run. So that's what it's going to come down to. Who wins in the trenches, man? I think it's honestly as simple as that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the other thing too with the Bills rushing attack, if they are successful, running with James Cook or Leonard Fournette or whoever else they have, I mean, Josh Allen's also a factor. Like he's
100%.
also that he just adds another element to it. And I feel like if just the running backs are successful on their own, having to stop Josh Allen with his legs, like that's a whole different animal, and it'll make it that much harder for the Steelers to kind of hold this offense and limit the scoring and the yardage.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's where I kind of talk about, you wonder how the Steelers get creative with their, all these safeties that they now have kind of healthy. And, can they drop one down in the box to kind of spy him? Or do they try to have one of their linebackers like Miles Jack or Landon Roberts or someone kind of spy him? Landon Roberts, a full participant in practice, so he'll be healthy. That's going to be a big boost to the Steelers because he's been dealing with that pec injury for a while. But yeah, man, I really think it's going to be trenches running the football and just the turnovers. The Bills are tied for the 7th most turnovers in the NFL. So, they've got 28 this season. James Cook has had issues fumbling the football at points this season. Josh Allen has, thrown interceptions a ton this season. So that's kind of going to be the other factors. Can the Steelers force turnovers, man? And my big X factor in this game is Alex Highsmith with TJ Watt out. What can Alex Highsmith do to kind of disrupt and kind of get in the backfield to, help against the run? And even kind of, can he force Josh Allen into some bad decisions? Whether it's throwing the ball or even when it's just making decisions, if he has an option, to throw or hand the ball off. So he's my X factor of how can he step up without TJ Watt. And that's definitely going to be someone I'm keeping my eye on.
Yeah, and I would just say generally for the pass rushers, like Josh Allen's a really hard quarterback to bring down. I mean, the number of times he escaped from the Eagles' pressure is just ridiculous. So
Yeah.
when you hit him, you better like make sure you bring him down. So
Yeah.
that's otherwise, yeah, it's gonna be just again a long day like it was for the Eagles defense. So yeah, that's really the only thing I have to say on that front. But yeah, Alex Smith, Alex Highsmith, excuse me, definitely has to step up and fill in for TJ Watt.
So that's pretty much everything I kind of have on this game. I mean, the last kind of thing I'll give is, the Steelers are outside of, TJ Watt, which is obviously he's the best player on the roster. So it's a huge loss. Outside of him, this team is relatively healthy.
Yeah.
It's like getting Minka Fitzpatrick back, DeMonte Casey coming back from the suspension, a Landon Roberts, like I said, full participant. Even Isaac Seumalo, who, for how well he's playing, he's also been dealing with a shoulder injury. All these guys are healthy. This is as healthy as they've really been in a while. So
yeah,
it's great that, all these guys are kind of healthy, and hopefully they can, really kind of put together a good game. And I think that they can really give the Bills a run in this one to possibly have the first ever 7 seed upsetting a 2 seed. So that's pretty much all I have on the game for now.
Yeah, well said there. I mean, yeah, this will be a closer game than the spread has. So
yeah, I already put some money on the Steelers spread.
I might do that too.
When it dropped to 9.5, I was like, all right, I'm not going to let this go any lower, and I got in on it.
Yeah, so, smart money.
Yeah,
smart money.
Yeah. All right, so why don't we talk about the Eagles? They're taking on the Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. These teams played each other once already this season early on when the Eagles beat the Buccaneers. So they're matching up again. What are kind of your initial thoughts on this game?
So these two teams are very different from when they played back in week 3. I mean,
no doubt.
So much time has passed since then. I mean, at that point, the Eagles ran for like 200 plus yards. The run game for the Bucs was non-existent. And just overall, the Eagles were playing better, and clearly they're not now. So again, just very, very different points of the season, very different teams right now. So, but I guess in terms of what I am looking for, I mean, offensively, it has to be attacking through the air because the Bucs, since that game, I mean, they've improved a lot against the run. They ended the regular season 5th in rush defense and I believe 5th in yards per carry. So they've become very stingy, and that's kind of how Todd Bowles' defenses usually are. They really typically rely on stopping the run first and then the pass. But so I don't really expect the running game to be a huge factor in this game. I think it's going to have to come through the air, and something got to look into. Obviously, the Jalen Hurts finger injury, and hopefully that doesn't really hamper him or limit him in any way, because the Bucs were the absolute worst defense against the pass. The entire season, and so it's going to have to be. I mean, again, we don't know the status of AJ Brown, but it's not looking promising on that front. But it'll have to be Devontae Smith, who has been practicing this week, recovering from that ankle injury. Julio Jones, who actually wasn't on the team when they first played.
Yeah.
Alameda Zacchaeus, Quez Watkins, Dallas Goedert is probably going to have more targets in this game. It's going to have to be those guys stepping up because, I mean, I really don't expect, again, the run game to be that big a factor. So you got to attack them through the air. And the other thing with throwing the ball, that's the Bucs are I believe is the 3rd highest blitzing team in the league. And as I said before, Jalen Hurts is thrown 8 interceptions against the blitz. And as I also said, the Eagles typically don't have hot routes or some like short dump downs that Hurts can like just throw to. So hopefully they realize that the offensive staff, Sirianni, Brian Johnson, they understand that Todd Bowles is going to blitz a lot to try and get Jalen Hurts uncomfortable and out of his spot, out of rhythm. So you got to have some sort of short option to at least, not lose yardage, obviously, and to, to keep the ball moving at least, in a positive direction. So how they handle the blitz is going to be such a huge factor. Otherwise, I mean, if it ends up like last week with the Giants, they're not going to put up points. Or sort of similar to the playoff game 2 years ago when they face the Bucks and Tom Brady. They're gonna score like late when it doesn't matter. So you don't want this game to get out of hand. You're gonna have to score a lot of points because really, I don't think the defense is gonna do them any favors. So it's got to be the offense carrying the load. I think so.
Yeah, and I mean, it just you bring up a good point where it's like what the Eagles do on offense fits into what the Buccaneers defense tries to do very well. Of they the fact that the Eagles are banged up in the pass game bodes very well for the Buccaneers to try and slow down that aspect of the offense. So
Yeah.
I think it really could just come down to, can the Eagles really run the ball effectively? Because if they can, that's going to allow for that blitz of the Buccaneers to potentially be effective. And if the Eagles, don't have the same potency with the pass game because of these injuries, it could be a perfect storm brewing for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, it really could, and that's what I'm kind of fearing, honestly. But again, and this could be Sirianni playing for his job, saving his job, but we don't know that. And hopefully, they can at least be competitive on the defensive side. I mean, I don't know where to turn, man. Like,
Yeah.
all I'm gonna say really is like, just I hope you can keep them out of the end zone. They haven't done that really at all this entire season well, so.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, here's what I will say. Like that's kind of more positive. Darius Slay will be back.
Yeah.
That's a huge plus. Avonte Maddox didn't play in that first game because he had suffered that injury in week 1 or week 2 against the Vikings. So he's another, and you're matched up against Mike Evans, who, he's not going to burn you, but like he's certainly a physical guy.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to challenge him and Chris Godwin, who's more of a slot guy at the line of scrimmage. Like, I mean, it's just going to be tough because I mean, if the Bucks, I mean, they've been running better. That's the other thing I said before. The Bucks offense or the Bucks running game was non-existent then. The last 7 weeks they've averaged just over 100 yards, so
Yeah.
they might lean on that a bit more, especially with kind of how the Eagles' defensive line's been playing not very well. I mean that used to be their strength, but now it's not.
Yeah.
So it just, I think it could get ugly. I'm just hoping they can make enough stops so that the offense can at least respond or like keep them in the game because that's really all I can say. There's not
Yeah.
like I'm not trusting Matt Patricia to suddenly pull a rabbit out of his hat and then just produce a ton of turnovers and this team plays like out of their mind. Like they're just not going to. Like
Yeah.
it's
And
just really hard, man.
I think the other thing that you like is kind of a factor is like early on in the season when these teams played, the Bucks didn't have an identity. There was so much moving parts going on where it was like, all right, Todd Bowles is kind of on the hot seat this season, coaching for his job. There was that QB battle coming into the season of Baker Mayfield versus Kyle Trask, and it was like, all right, how long is Baker Mayfield going to stick it out at the quarterback position here? Now I think they're kind of at the point where it's like, I think you described them and their identity in the perfect way. They're stingy. They're not going to light anything up. They're not going to do, they're not going to be able to, kind of be this high flying, high octane team, but they know who they are. They're stingy and they could cause Philadelphia some serious problems. And, I mean, they're also playing, at home, which I think is a little bit of a factor. Raymond James Stadium has a little bit of a home crowd, not one of the premier ones, but definitely one that you don't just shrug your shoulders at as far as home field advantages go. So all of those definitely factors that are going to kind of be going into the game here.
Yeah, so I don't really have much more to add. So should we just get into the picks right now?
Yeah, let's get into the picks. Let's keep it rolling with Philadelphia. Last week when we did these picks for the Eagles, we both had them winning, which we were incorrect on, but we both figured the Giants would cover the spread, which they obviously did in the win. So here they are currently favored by 3, according to FanDuel in Tampa Bay. So Ricardo, I already see you shaking your head, man. What's your thoughts on how this one's going to?
Why are the Eagles favored is my question, first off, because has Vegas been watching them the last 6 weeks? They've not covered the spread the last 6 weeks at all. So I'm going to keep going with that trend and say the Bucks cover. Not only cover, but I think the Bucks are winning because, like I've been saying, this team has shown no fight, no resilience, no response really since the Bills game, which again was weeks ago. It feels like it was years ago, but I think the Bucks win 27-24. And that's even me being generous because I genuinely think this could get out of hand. The way the defense is playing, just no. And then if they're not going to be able to put hot routes or dump downs for Hurts, no, forget about it. This game will be a blowout. But I'll be kind to the Eagles.
Yeah, and then we start to get into really the conversation about Nick Sirianni, man. I mean, I will also say the Bucs haven't been playing great football either. I mean, maybe we were giving them a little bit more credit, but it's like 2 weeks ago they lost to the Saints. It was an ugly win against Carolina. So it's like they are still a very beatable team. They're playing in the worst division in football. I think the Eagles are going to get through this game. I think they're going to win it and get to the next round. I think they get bounced in the divisional round, which we'll talk about next week if they make it there. But I think they're going to do enough to get by Tampa Bay. I think it's going to be on the back of the offense is going to have to be productive, and the defense, you just hope they can kind of hold enough. I'm going to kind of go in the same kind of scoring area. I'm going to say they win. They're not going to cover the spread. I'll give them 28-26. They get the win.
All right. Did I say my score, by the way?
Yeah, you said 27-24.
Okay, I did. Okay, just making sure because I was kind of rambling.
Yeah. Yeah, all good. All right, so now let's talk about Pittsburgh. I mean, we just said it. Big spread, plus 9.5 right now, opened at plus 10. That spread is just huge. I think if it's in perfect conditions, Buffalo probably wins this game and it's not super close. But with these snowy conditions, with Pittsburgh playing really well right now, I think Pittsburgh's running attack is better than Buffalo right now. I think it's kind of been better all season. I'm just saying that off the top of my head, more of the eye test than it is a number. So I think they're going to cause problems, man. I'm going to keep riding with this team, dude. I mean, do I think that the Bills might win this game? Yeah, but I'm going to roll with my Steelers. I'm going to say that they get the win. I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair, and I think that it's going to be let's do 14-10 is the score that I'm going to do. 14-10, crazy snow game, not a lot of scoring. Steelers get the win and advance to the next round.
Okay. So I'm definitely hammering the spread. I mean, the Steelers to cover, sorry.
Yeah.
Because, again, that the conditions are just they're going to make the game way closer than it has to be. But I'm going to pick the Bills to win, but I'm going to say a weird one, 15-12. It's not going to be it's not going to be field goal necessarily. I think it's going to be because the conditions
weird shit. Yeah.
Yeah, because the conditions will be so bad. There might be a safety in there. You might have to go for a 2-point conversion instead of extra points. So
that's valid. That's really valid.
I'm going to say 15-12. That's a weird one, but we're going to go with it.
All right. And who'd you say? Were you picking the Bills?
Yeah, the Bills.
All right. Bills win and do not cover according to Ricardo's prediction, man. I mean, here's the other thing too. I didn't even bring this up. The Steelers, I think, are 1-10 is the number all time without T.J. Watt since they drafted him. So they haven't had a lot of success without him.
Yeah.
I think that because of the conditions, they'll at least cover. I'm shocked that the spread is still that big and Vegas hasn't adjusted it yet. But, man, I just think it could be a perfect storm. If they can find a way to get in the end zone once or twice, they could potentially win this game. And it'll be interesting to watch. It's one of the first ones we have Saturday at 1 o'clock. So I'll be tuned into it. I'm sure you will be as well. But, yeah, sounds good, man. Sounds good. And we will anxiously await to see if both of these teams advance to the next round or if we start to get into off-season talk for both of these franchises.
I don't. It's gonna be off-season talk for the Eagles for sure, but it's fine. It's fine.
You're so down on them. You're so down. Any final thoughts as you're down on the Eagles here as we close out the wild card weekend episode?
I think the Steelers have a better chance to beat the Bills than the Eagles do the Bucs. That's all I'll say. Good night.
You are down on the Bucs. We'll close it at that. Everybody, see you next time. Peace out. Bye-bye.